Imagine this. Nine. Imagine this. 900,000 to 2 million people dead within a moment's notice. Survivors left to grieve briefly, then rebuild their lives. Dead on impact, death by drowning, death by disease, death by hunger. What do all these statements link to? The Yellow River flood of 1887. Throughout this digital story, I will be taking you along a journey of before and after the flood, as well as how it was caused by the people and the land. Once you know all about the events of this horrid disaster, we will go into detail about how a single image of this disaster can be interpreted in many different ways, specifically focusing on one American representation of this disaster that happened in China. Why did the photographer of this image take and edit the image in the way that he or she did? We'll be finding out all this information and more, so stay tuned. From the beginning of time, settlers knew that the Yellow River, also known as China's Sorrow, was a beast that needed to be tamed. Local farmers would come to set up a system of levees throughout the river line to try to prevent any potential disasters. As seasons would come and go, the levees would always need repairs because of the nature of the river, constantly sensitive to changes in climate and human disturbances. There was a series of unfortunate weather patterns, including severe droughts, then freezing winters, that destroyed the land surrounding the river, thus giving the river more power with runoff and eroding soil. But the farming at this time was all based around the river, which was a main factor that led to the events to come. Since ancient times, farmers relied on the river as a main source of farming, which is where a dilemma comes about. The climate at the time was very humid and great for farming growth. Because of this big boom in farming, many people started populating the region to get a hand in on the farming industry. As more people came and technologies improved, more population invaded the region, which then altered the great farming weather. Instead of giving up, the farmers would try new farming methods that worked for a while, then more settlers would come, then they would find a new method. This never-ending cycle actually created a positive feedback loop that resulted in more people and poorer land quality. The soil was destroyed and population runoff was filling the river. The levees proved to not be strong enough to hold back the hundreds of years of damage that was put onto the land. Just so you all can get an understanding of how massive the Yellow River is, here's a quote from the Encyclopedia of Disaster Relief. The Yellow River is the second longest river in China, and is the sixth longest river in the world, at approximately 3,395 miles, covering a drainage basin of some 290,000 square miles. This river is huge and powerful, which the people of northern China were quickly able to figure out in September of 1887. Without warning, levees broke and flash flooding destroyed entire villages and killed thousands, if not millions. This image here, though, remains so mysterious to me in the way that it was taken and edited, which is where I will focus my efforts on today. This image was taken by an unknown photographer, and after many searches only appears to be on a news website. This is difficult to comprehend because there is so much depth to see in this image. First off, the feeling this image gives me is deep sadness. You can tell that this view of a street is not a normal scene. Water is covering almost the entirety of the people within the street, and I would assume up to about half of the buildings. You see a man row a boat down the middle of the street, which is not a normal sight to see. Obviously, something devastating happened here. In the image, it seems as though the street signs and business signs are very large compared to the people in the surroundings. This may imply that this street was once a very popular place to come with large, fancy signs as tourist attractions. Not only the signs, but the buildings themselves are so emphasized in this photograph. I can see all the lettering on the signs and the structure of the individual buildings. What is not emphasized, though, are the actual people in the image. There is not one person in this image where you can see their actual face or even facial features. They almost look fake or created figures that don't have an identity or life to show. This could be done to portray that everyone in the area was struggling and it didn't matter who you were, but that you were a survivor, just fighting for your life. Or it can also be seen as a lack of care for the people involved and more of a focus on the event, not the personal damages of the event. In the image, we have some people that are near carrying items above their heads to make sure that the items stay dry, and as you look into the distance down the street, you see a man rowing a boat as well as many more human figures pass him, all trying to get to where they need to go or getting what they need. The spacing of the people that are close and far gives the viewer an almost real perspective of what they would be seeing if they were standing right there with these people. It is as though if you're looking down this long street that is representative of the hardships of the voyage you are currently on and struggle to stay afloat just like everyone else. In terms of contrast of the image, it seems like every person captured in this image has light skin, whereas the figure in the front right seems to have been darkened. For what reason? We are unsure. I would imagine that it has something to do with hiding the identity of the person in the image, just like you can't identify any other person in the image either. This, though, is a question I would love to know the true answer to. Another question is, what is beyond the image? I can only assume that outside of this little city area, there are villages that have been completely destroyed by the flood and ruins of the lives once lived there left floating adrift. Overall, I think this representation of disaster is trying to show life after the flood and how people were trying to deal with the disaster in their own ways. They may not be identifiable people, but every single survivor struggled and felt pain. As you can tell from what has been said and shown, the Yellow River flood of 1887 was a horrible disaster that claimed many lives and affected the lives of the living as well. It seemed as though no one walked away from the situation without pain and sorrow in their hearts and lives. Many people were lost as well as homes and belongings. So it all starts from the vast beasts that tried to be controlled with levees and waterways to the farmers trying to make something of themselves that ultimately led to the horrible disaster that was one of the deadliest floods of all time. If you take one thing away from this video, I want it to be this. You never know when something so unexpected can happen, so be sure to always be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. Thank you.